The snatch. It is both one of the most technically demanding and the most powerful movements one can do with a barbell. In order for a movement to be considered a snatch, the bar must move from the floor to a full overhead and locked out position in one continuous movement, without any overhead pressing motion. The complexity of the movement starts with what we call the first pull. The lifter must maintain their back angle without allowing their shoulders to go too far over the bar or too far behind the bar. Then, as the bar passes the knees in what we call the second pull, the lifter accelerates the bar rapidly and explodes the bar off of their hips. This is where we can see the highest power output within the movement, and likely the highest power output possible in any barbell sport. In one particular study, an 82.5 kilogram lifter had a power output of 3,634 watts during a snatch. By comparison, a 100 kilo powerlifter exhibited only 1,100 watts during a back squat. This is why commonly people say that weightlifting is a misnomer and that it should actually be called powerlifting. As we watch this 220 kilo, near 500 pound snatch, we must understand the incredible detail and gargantuan levels of strength and power required for such a lift. As soon as he extends, the bar rapidly stops accelerating. Because the bar stops accelerating, it quickly reaches its peak height. This height is nowhere near high enough for the lifter to lock his arms in an overhead standing position. So the lifter must rapidly descend underneath the quickly decelerating and soon to be descending bar. However, he isn't just falling underneath the bar. No, that wouldn't be fast enough. If you notice, his wrists are still above the bar after he extends. This is because while he is in the air, he's actually pulling himself underneath the bar. The wrist position denotes the leverage he maintains on the bar as he pulls underneath. As he hits the bottom position, his elbows lock out overhead, and his hips, knees, and ankles act as shock absorption to the falling barbell. The bar settles, and he stands to a fully locked out position. All of this occurs in just over 2 seconds. None of this was meant to scare you away from trying to snatch. As to say it's too difficult, you shouldn't even approach it. No, over my years of training weightlifting, completely self-taught, I solidified my progression to get anyone to begin to snatch. I went from not even being able to sit in a full depth squat to 7 years later snatching 143 kilos or 315 pounds. If you haven't realized by now, weightlifting requires a serious amount of mobility in all joints. There is no better display of this than the bottom position of a snatch. Much like knowing how to skate is a prerequisite to playing ice hockey, development of the mobility required to sit at the bottom of the snatch is a prerequisite to begin snatching. What is required of the bottom position is having the hip crease noticeably below the knee crease, full compression of the hamstrings to the calves, and full compression of the quads to the torso, and flat and equal pressure in the feet. This is our home base. Everything starts and stops with this position. And here's how we develop this. The first thing you're going to do is find an upright or something that is solidly planted into the ground. You're going to stand about shoulder width apart, you're going to hold on to that upright, and you're going to lower your hip crease to noticeably below the knee crease. Now this isn't really close to the bottom position of a snatch, but we're going to work towards that. As you get used to this position, this compressed knee and compressed hip, what you're going to try and do is wiggle around to the point where you can put more pressure on your feet and less pressure on your hands. You can start to then let go of the upright. You'll notice your back is probably really round, but as you work at this, your back will end up straightening up and you'll be able to sit in this position. It's going to be very hard. It's going to be very difficult at first, but the more time you spend down here, the more your body adapts, and then the more comfortable you will be in this bottom position. Now realize that this might take a lot more time than just one session. This is something that you should be doing at your home. You can do it at the gym, but you should allot a decent amount of time at this per day if you want to get comfortable in this position. Now what we're going to do is stack up some plates, and we're going to sit to these plates and relax. We're going to do a similar thing that we did with the upright. We're going to wiggle around. We're going to try and get our feet maybe closer to our hips, But again, our hip crease is below the knee crease. And all we're gonna try to do is develop tightness in the adductors, in the groin area, and then also develop pressure in the feet before we begin to stand off the box. You can start to lean forward slightly and you can feel your butt lifting off of the plates. This is good. This means the pressure is in your feet and you're in a low position squat. From there, all you're gonna do is just stand. You're gonna try and sit back down and reset. To add a challenge to this, you can simply just take one plate away. Weightlifters must use what's called a hook grip. This really is a non-negotiable in optimizing your weightlifting performance. This allows the weightlifter to maximally load the lift with the focus on the main muscles in the legs and the hips to develop the power in the lift without having the grip be a limiting factor. The change of speed and power adds a ton of stress to the hands. To prevent the hand from opening and dropping the bar, the weightlifters must put their fingers around their thumb like this. This will be a slightly painful experience at first, but you can use things like thumb tape to mitigate this pain, and also in time, you'll get used to this and there really won't be any more pain. Then we must establish our grip width. While placing the bar in the hips, we'll move our hands out to the side so that with locked out arms and good posture, the bar will lie right in our hip crease. If our grip is too narrow or we allow our shoulders to hunch over, the bar will not lie in the hip crease. Now we'll focus on the overhead position, and the name of the game here is stability. With our new snatch grip, we will put the bar overhead. We're going to actively and forcibly lock our elbows almost as hard as we can. Then we're gonna pull our scaps together. And what you'll notice is the bar will be placed more over the base of my skull or more towards my ears. You'll see my head kind of poking forward a little bit. That's a good thing. We don't wanna be directly in one line. We want that bar to kind of feel as if it's sitting back. But again, it's important to not allow your elbows to unlock and the scaps to rotate away from each other. Now we must put both of the previous parts together. We must understand that we shouldn't approach this like a typical squat. Remember, our aim is to hit the required depth without allowing the points of performance in our upper bodies to collapse. Elbows locked, scaps together, hip crease below knee crease. If any of those things change, we are not doing what we should do. Now, with the bar on our back and with our snatch grip, we will sit to the plates. From here, we're going to do a very similar progression that we did without the bar. Move your feet into a position where you feel as though you're getting tightness in the legs and you can open up your chest. We're gonna press the bar overhead. And then if we have to, slightly lean forward and you'll feel yourself starting to come off the box. There you're going to use your legs to stand. Then we can just bring the barbell back and repeat. What you'll notice is there's this slight incline in my torso. And that's okay. What we're doing is allowing our hips to find that pocket so that they can sit below the knees. If the hips stay in line with the knees and the barbell in line with kind of the middle of our head, it's gonna be very difficult for our hips to then displace below the knee. They're basically gonna kind of stop at about halfway. Once we get used to this, we're going to take the plates away. We're gonna put the barbell overhead in that standing position. And again, what we're gonna try to do is pull the scaps together, keeping the elbows forcibly locked. All we're gonna do from here is pull the hips back and try and get them below the knee crease. You may see some of these points of performance fall apart, and that's totally okay. All you're gonna have to do is develop that mobility so that that doesn't happen. Maybe more time in the squat without any weight, maybe more time with the barbell overhead. Next, we have the barbell progression. The first thing we're gonna do is a muscle snatch from a hanged position. The barbell is gonna start in the hip crease, and while keeping our wrists down, we're gonna raise our elbows. What we're gonna think about is keeping our wrists down and basically whipping the bar into the overhead position. What we don't wanna do is raise the bar up to about chin height or shoulder height, drop our elbows and press the bar. We want to be able to pull that bar and feel it in our hands all the way to the last moment in the turnover. Remember, our overhead position has to match what we talked about earlier, elbows forcibly locked and shoulder blades together. Next, what we're gonna do is add in that squat with the first movement. So we can call this like a muscle snatch plus squat. We're gonna do the same thing. Remember, this is initiated with the hands pulling up. We're not moving our hips at all. This is a strict, very strict movement. So pull your elbows high. As the bar gets to about chest height, then you descend underneath it. Next, after this, we're going to develop hip contact. Another non-negotiable. This is something that really isn't talked about much, but it's ever so apparent in snatch techniques. All we're gonna do is slightly bend our knee and let the bar go away from us a little bit. And what we're gonna do is very slightly hit our hips. And we're just gonna tug on that bar upward after it makes contact with the hips. Start really small with this and just start to build momentum and build height on the bar. Then after a while, you can just turn over into that muscle snatch. After a certain time, you can turn over into that muscle snatch with the overhead squat, and then you can start moving your feet and really exploding. The bar will hit the hips, and now we can jump and catch in that overhead position. At this point, if you feel as though the progression has caught up to you and things are getting a little confusing, all you have to do is take one step back. So if contact was a little bit difficult for you, just practice the turnover. Practice the muscle snatch plus the squat. If that was too hard for you, practice just the muscle snatch from the hang position. It's important that you become efficient in one part of the progression before moving on to the next. So what we're gonna do here is basically the same thing, the contact to catching in that snatch. And we're really close to snatching all the way here. What we're gonna do instead of the contact is we're actually gonna bring the bar from the mid shin or just slightly below the knee. So instead of the bar going away from us, we're gonna bring the bar down to that below the knee position and immediately come up and hit the hips. Again, if this is getting too difficult, go back to the contact drill. In this next step, it would be helpful if you had plates that were really light, whether they're 2.5 kilo technique plates or what I have here, which are just 10-pound plates. What we're gonna do is basically the same drill we just did. Instead of our marker being the bar at the mid shin, our marker for changing direction is going to be the plates tapping the floor very lightly. We'll call this the touch and go snatch. So we're gonna stand all the way up, get a good posture, take a breath in. We're gonna lower very slowly, just tap the bar to the ground. Now, as we tap the bar to the ground, it's important that we don't just turn over and go as fast as we can. We have to develop speed. So that means when we tap the floor, move slowly after the tap. Then once the barbell passes the knees, then you can explode off of the hips. At this point, we've pretty much snatched. That's pretty much it. And now what we're gonna do is approach the bar like we're going to snatch it. What I want you to do is pretend like the bar is in your hands and basically do the exact same drill we did. You're gonna stand tall, take a breath in, and lower slowly while maintaining posture. Then you're gonna grab the bar in the grip width you had decided on in the beginning, and you're going to immediately turn over and slowly go to the knees, then when you pass the knees, explode. Essentially, this is a touch and go snatch. It's almost exactly what we did before, except you just don't have the bar in your hands to begin with. Now what we're gonna do is take some time in between going down to grab the bar and lifting. This is it. This is the final step. After this step, you are snatching. With your feet right around shoulder width and your toes maybe slightly out. Depending on your morphology, they could be more out or they could be more forward. I like to point my toes out a decent amount. Try and keep your chest up as you go to grab the bar. Find your grip width and settle. Do not let your back round. From here, you're gonna take a deep breath in, and you won't start the lift when you finish that breath in. Do not breathe out. So you take the breath in. What you can do is slightly lift your hips and then lower them. This is called a dynamic start, and we use this like we would use any stretch reflex in any lifting. If you're not comfortable with the dynamic start, that's totally fine. Grab the bar, take your breath in, and go. But remember, as we learn this, it's important that we have control off of the floor and then we explode. We do not want to just go fast off of the floor. So look, now you know how to snatch. Go out there, do some research, watch some weightlifting, get obsessed with it. It's a fun thing to get good at. Also, say you're able to build your snatch from nothing to 100 pounds. You might notice some serious gains in mobility, leg strength, and just kinesthetic awareness. I can tell you from experience, this is an incredibly pleasurable thing to get good at. It's why I've pursued the sport of weightlifting for damn near a decade. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video.